Good morning. My name is Herb Fluker from Michigan Works Southeast, and this morning is our fourth annual Expungement Fair. This fair is the first time that we'll be doing this via virtual means. So please feel free, if you have questions, if you have problems, to send the questions in via the chat, and we will be able to answer your questions from that point. What I would like to do at this point is I would like to go ahead and introduce our first speaker of the day. It's a great friend of mine, my coach, my team leader, our Michigan Works Southeast Service Center Manager, Johnny Epps. Johnny, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Herb. First, let me welcome everyone to our virtual Expungement Fair. As Herb mentioned earlier, this is our fourth annual Expungement Fair, but this year, since the COVID pandemic, we had to switch things up a little bit. That's why we're doing this means virtually. We started this back in 2017, and the way we got started was we had individuals coming to our service center asking about expungement. And after we got 3 or 4 questions about expungement, that got my wheels to turning, thinking, wow, this is a big need in the community. How can we assist the community with expungement on top of our other services we provided? So I got together with Herb, and he liked the idea. We got the okay from our deputy director and director of Michigan Works Southeast. So then Herb and I had to think about who do we need to bring on board to pull this together. And from us thinking and working this out, I'd like to thank the following: Legal Services of South Central Michigan, Michigan Legal Help, Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, Washtenaw Literacy, Washtenaw County United Way, Washtenaw County Public Defender's Office, Washtenaw County's Prosecutor's Office, and last but not least, my co-workers here at Michigan Works Southeast Service Center here in Ypsilanti. As I mentioned before, this is our 4th time doing the expungement, and we are able to help over 30 individuals get their record expunged. So hopefully after this webinar, we'll be able to assist more individuals, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Johnny. Really appreciate that. We will continue on with our next portion of the program. Today's agenda is listed here for everyone to see. Today's agenda includes the welcome and history, which we just did, the panel introductions, the panel presentations, and then the expungement procedure. We'll have a short question and answer period, and then we'll have some closing remarks. Today's panelists is a very esteemed group of lawyers, lawmakers. I'm happy to even have the opportunity to meet all of them. The first panelist is APA from the city of Ann Arbor, John Reiser. APA Reiser has been in the legal profession for a long period of time. When I first met him, he was still with the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office. APA Reiser will go over what our current expungement law is, what are some of the pitfalls of that law, and why that law had to be updated and changed so it could meet the needs of our community. And then we're also lucky to have our own 18th District State Senator Jeff Irwin, who will be talking with us this morning about the new law, which the governor just signed recently. So we're very excited about the changes in the upcoming new law. And the senator will share with us what that means for us as everyday people. And then third, we have attorney Michael King. Michael has been with our committee since its inception. He has provided a lot of assistance and help along with the rest of our committee. And he's going to talk about what the expungement procedure is, how you as an individual can, start the process with help from our committee, so that you can move from the conviction that you may have on your record now that's keeping you from maybe getting a job or getting a promotion, to a point where that's behind you. So we're going to start off with first APA Riser. And APA Riser, I will turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Herb, and hello, everyone. Good morning. Am I supposed to just now share my screen, pull up my PowerPoint, share my screen, Johnny? Or are you running the PowerPoint?
I can do that for you, sir. Just let me know when.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Fire it up. While you do that, my name is John Reiser. I'm a senior assistant city attorney in Ann Arbor. I've only been here a few weeks, but I did spend about 22 years as an assistant prosecuting attorney in Washtenaw County, and then a few years as an assistant prosecuting attorney in Oakland County. So I have a lot of experience with the crimes that end up on people's criminal convictions, as well as the application process, at least when it gets to court. I've also volunteered a couple times. I volunteered in Pittsfield Township with Herb on a expungement fair there, and then I was also one in Ann Arbor several months ago, and I see the pitfalls that one encounters when they're trying to do this, especially when it comes to getting information on what convictions they had and whether that criminal contact ended up in a conviction or a deferred sentence or a set aside or 7411 or a HIDA. And we're going to talk briefly about some of those things. So go ahead, do the next one. Okay. So the current law is MCL 780.621, and it's really not that long. But the current law says that after 5 years, after you're sentenced, or when you complete your probation, parole, or your prison or jail sentence, you can apply to get expunged one felony if you only have one felony and 2 misdemeanors, or you can apply to get 2 misdemeanors if you have 2 misdemeanors but no felony convictions. Now, Senator Irwin is going to talk about how the new set of laws are going to change, but this is what the rules are right now as we do this today. Unless the crime was a traffic offense, such as a DWLS, such as a drunk driving, no absent person, things of that nature, or if it's a felony domestic violence with a prior domestic violence conviction, usually DV third is the kind of thing they're talking about. A CSC, other than a CSC fourth before 2015, and a child abuse second, child pornography, solicitation. The list is in the statute itself. That is 780.621. So the crimes at the bottom are crimes you currently can't get expunged. And to the extent that any of those are now on the list, we'll hear about that from Senator Irwin, but I don't think many, if any of them are. But the next page, if you could go to the next page. So how you apply is you file an application to the convicting court, which could be a district court, it could be a circuit court. If it's in Wayne County, there are a few municipal courts on the east side, but it's usually a district or circuit court. Certainly in Washtenaw County, there's the 14A district court, 14B district court, and the 15th district court. 14A has 3, actually 4, and those are in Saline, Chelsea, Ypsilanti City, as well as the service center, Pittsfield Township near the jail, Hogback Road in Washtenaw. The 14B is in Ypsilanti Township on Huron River Drive, and the 15th District Court is in the Justice Center in downtown Ann Arbor. The Circuit Court is also in downtown Ann Arbor, but a different building. If you're trying to have a felony expunged, you apply to the convicting court, is what the statute says. And that would be in downtown Ann Arbor in the 22nd Circuit Court. And if it's a misdemeanor, you go to one of the various district courts. So one of the trickiest things about getting an expungement or applying for an expungement, especially if it's been a while since you've had these convictions and it's something you just want to get off your record, or maybe you had a rough period in your life and you got kind of a lot of them in different jurisdictions. it's finding out where they are. And that can be tricky. There's iChat, which is a Michigan State Police website. You can also talk to your attorney that represented you. Maybe it's the public defender, or maybe it's private counsel who handled that case, and see if they have any information. That may or may not be fruitful, depending on how old the case was and whether they or not they're still going to have the record on that. There are also various court databases. There are JIS and Odyssey. There used to be Fulcrum, ENACT, various databases. The prosecutor also has internal databases where they track these things. And then one of the things that is really might be the most helpful is you contact the local prosecutors or city or township attorneys to find out what their records reflect. When I was at these fairs, I found that the best way was when I contacted support staff at the prosecutor's office and said, "Hey, Tammy, can you pull up this name? What do you see? Was there a conviction? Was there not a conviction?" But you need to have an accurate a list of all those convictions and contacts that you have. You also need to get fingerprinted at a local police department or the Michigan State Police, and you file the application with the court clerk, 5 notarized copies. And I don't want to step on Michael's toes, who's going to be talking about the process. And Michael, if I say anything that is incorrect as how you do it, feel free to jump in. And then you send to the various parties, the Attorney General and the Michigan State Police, along with $50 for them to do their work on the file. And you send a copy to the prosecuting attorney, who was the prosecutor involved, whether it's city, township, or county level. And then you prepare for and you attend the hearing. And it's in Washtenaw County, they were often granted. Oakland County, maybe less so, but it is a court proceeding. The judge is deciding whether to give you that second break that the law allows. So treat it seriously, show up in courtroom attire, even if it's Zoom. Make sure that you have a professional court appearance on Zoom if it's not in person. You can attach resumes, letters of support from employers, family members, volunteer groups, whatever you're working on, school or work records, diplomas, certificates that you've earned. Try to convince the court that you've turned your life around. It certainly doesn't. You don't have to do that, but it helps. And also, if you provide a copy of that to the prosecutor, then he or she knows that you really are serious about getting this matter put behind you and it expunged. And then you need to follow up to make sure that it in fact was expunged. If you can go to the next one, Herb, please, and thank you. The next slide. And here's the form, SCAO. You can go to the Michigan Michigan Supreme Court website, and then under forms, SCAO stands for State Court Administrative Office. They have forms, and every form has a number. And at the bottom, we'll see on this one. So you fill out the top, I was convicted of this offense, and then you have to make certain averments. No other application has been filed. No other application has been filed to set aside the conviction. Can you go to the next one, which is the bottom half of that form? At least 5 years have passed since the sentence was imposed or discharged. Go up one. That's right. Next. That's right. There are no other pending criminal charges against me. And I have not been convicted of more than 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors. And you talk about the statute there. And then you sign that out and you have it notarized. Herb, can you go forward a few slides, please? Because for some reason, they got put together a little out of order. One more, please. And thank you. One more. Yeah, right there's that's the second page. So, and then what you do is you send it to them, to Michigan Attorney General. Hearing will be held, and then there's a proof of service which says that you mailed it to the parties. Okay, that's the application. If you could go back, Herb, please. Keep going back. One. Okay, so you can't see this. That's where I want you to stay. What can be tricky about these misdemeanors is it was possible if you had a rough patch in your life to have a lot of them, like drunken disorderlies or jostling or disturbing the peace or trespass or things that count on your misdemeanor counts. Also, and those are kind of listed on this form, which is kind of hard to see. Maybe it isn't for you, but it is for me. And then, you know, retail fraud would be an example, a use of controlled substance, use of marijuana, use of cocaine, use of mushrooms, possession of mushrooms, things like that. Retail fraud, like I said, a lot of driving offenses could trick people up. You couldn't get them expunged, but driving while license suspended, invalid ops, no ops on person. There's an offense that a lot of city and township prosecutors let people plead to, and that's called allowing an unlicensed person to drive. And that the advantage of that is it's a non-abstractable, so it's a non-moving violation. So that helps you with your driving record. Unfortunately, it still is a misdemeanor conviction, and it's a traffic conviction. So that's a MCL 257-326. So those are some things that you got to kind of look out for. Another offense you sometimes see is operating a motor vehicle without insurance. There's no proof of insurance. That's just a civil infraction, but not having the money to have insurance and driving, that's a 1-year offense, and that counts in the misdemeanor counts currently. And then there's various traffic offenses, like I say, reckless driving, improper passing of a police car that has pulled someone over and you didn't slow down or move over for them. That's a misdemeanor driving offense, as are drunk driving, drug driving, fail to stop at accidents, things of that nature. And then on the other side, on the right of that form, are some of the common felonies that you might have. And those felonies could be a resisting and obstructing. It could be an NSF check or some bad checks or retail fraud in the first degree. And those are listed there. Usually you're going to know if you're convicted of a felony more than a misdemeanor, which may or may not register years later in your memory. Could you go to the next page, please? Okay, under the current law, some of the limitations are if you have too many misdemeanors, especially traffic misdemeanors, that renders you ineligible. I spoke about some of them before, but here they are in writing: DWS, no ops on person, allowing an unlicensed person to drive, drunk driving, possession of marijuana, use of controlled substances, cocaine, heroin, LSD, mushrooms, etc. No insurance, trespass, disorderly conduct, reckless driving, disturbing the peace. Another limitation is that your inability to accurately ascertain the prior convictions, especially if they were city or township ordinance convictions, which are often 90-day misdemeanors. The significance of a 90-day misdemeanor is that a crime for which fingerprinting is not required. And if you don't have to get fingerprinted, that it doesn't get into the lien and it doesn't come up in your iChat and you think you're all set, but lo and behold, the local county, city, or township prosecutor is aware of it because of their internal database, or they'll have a record of it. Another limitation of the current law is that capital cases aren't excluded for consideration. And a capital case is a crime for which the maximum penalty is life imprisonment. And examples of those are armed robbery, bank robbery, assault with intent to murder, assault with intent to rob while armed. And that could be a bank robbery, a piece of paper handed to a bank teller in a moment of stupidity or to get drugs renders you ineligible for the expungement of that offense, even though you never had a weapon or got any money. So that's a serious, obviously, consideration under the statute. Another limitation of the current law, and we can hear from Senator Irwin about whether that's changed for the new law, is that deferred sentences and convictions that were set aside or deferred count as prior convictions for the purposes of this law under MCL 780.621. And the next page, if you could, please, Herb, talks about the deferred sentences, and I don't know the extent to which that shows up, but there are various statutory bases for having a crime that you've accepted responsibility to set aside. A common one is what's called 7411, which is MCL 333.7411 of the Public Health Code. So if you first time possession or use of controlled substance, not distribution or trafficking or things like that, sales, but the first time possession or use of a controlled substance, you can get that taken off, set aside. It's really never taken off your record, but it's set aside as a conviction. Those count. A minor in possession, which used to be a misdemeanor, And now it generally isn't unless you work your way up the chain and get a few more, then they become misdemeanors. And then you can, those, if you have prior MIPs that were set aside statutorily, which you could, because that's a relatively new law in Michigan criminal jurisprudence, but those would count. HIDA, which is the Homes Useful Training Act for people, used to be between 17 and 21, but now it's between 17 and 24, but not 24. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. Those Homes Useful Training Act, or HIDA, or YTA, set-asides count as priors. Domestic violence, there's a statute and the domestic violence statute that allows the prosecutor after consulting with the victim to agree to the matter not ending up in a conviction. That's called a 4A, which is under MCL 769 4A. We just call it 4A for short. And then a delayed sentence. A delayed sentence is sometimes used as a deferred sentence. So if you got a sentence that was delayed, some courts dismiss sentences after a delayed sentence or deferred sentence. We're going to talk about them interchangeably today. So a delayed or deferred sentence that doesn't end up in a conviction still counts in your totals. And then obviously expungements, what we're talking about today. Okay, the next slide, please, which I think we've seen. And the next one, which might be the intro to Senator Jeff Irwin, unless there are any questions of me at this point. Johnny, you're muted.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate all of that useful knowledge. And just from seeing that, you've seen that there was a need to change the law. There's been a lot of different groups, legislators who have worked on this, and we're lucky to have today Senator Jeff Irwin, our state senator from the 18th district, who's going to share a little bit about the new law, the changes, some of the things that are upcoming. Senator Irwin, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Herb. And I'm lucky to be here, fortunate to represent the 18th district here in Washtenaw County. And to your point, as Mr. Reiser made clear, the current law in Michigan around expungements or set aside of your record is rather restrictive, and there has been a tremendous amount of work going on over the course of the last several years to try to open that up and to try to make it easier for folks to get a second chance, make it easier for folks who have put their life back on track to stay on track. And so, one of the most exciting things happening in Lansing right now is that there is a lot of bipartisan work being done on criminal justice issues. And just recently, as was mentioned earlier, the governor signed a new law around expungement and set aside of records that has been sort of commonly called the clean slate law. And when she signed that law, it dramatically improved the opportunities for a second chance. It really dramatically improved the opportunities for expungements here in Michigan. And I'll try to cover all the ways in which it did that. But just to dwell a little bit on sort of where we're coming from, as Mr. Reiser's presentation made clear, here in Michigan, we had very, very restrictive rules. It was very, very difficult to get an expungement because there were strict limits on how many crimes you could have, not just serious crimes, but also a number of minor crimes could trip you up. Also, maybe some of the folks who are listening might know folks who have gotten multiple crimes sort of as a part of one action. Those sorts of situations were often putting people over the limits, and Michigan's limits were uncommonly restrictive, up to 2 felonies, up to, one felony, up to 2 misdemeanors. And so there was a ton of folks who had more than 2 misdemeanors or more than 1 felony, and sometimes, like I said, even from just 1 incident. So, folks got to work on trying to fix that, and we were able to pass these clean slate laws, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But the other problem with our expungement law was not just that it was very restrictive in terms of who could access it and who was eligible, but it also was unnecessarily difficult and complicated for people to navigate the system. So much so that a recent University of Michigan study showed that 95% of the people in the state of Michigan who are currently eligible for a set aside of their record had not applied for a set aside of their record because of the time and the expense and the paperwork and all of that, right? And so a lot of folks, look at that prospect of filling out those forms that Mr. Reiser showed and consulting an attorney and attesting to all those things and, going down to court, and it's too daunting and expensive and uncertain and time consuming of a process. So a lot of people don't do it. So what we tried to do with these expungement laws is not just expand the eligibility and expand the people who are able to have access to an opportunity to have their records set aside, but also to make it automatic for some folks so that we could save them the time and expense of doing that. And then also hopefully we can save those folks at the court the time and expense of processing all that paperwork. Because we know that there's a whole set of petty and minor offenses that currently judges have to approve expungements for, but probably that's not necessary. All right, before I go into the meat of what we did, the one other thing I wanted to talk about is something that I learned very early on in this process, which is that everyone was talking to me about expungement. And when I looked for the word expungement in Michigan's laws, I couldn't find it. And what happens here in Michigan is, I just want to make it clear to folks that we actually set aside records. Now, commonly when we're talking about this, we usually use the words expungement and set aside interchangeably. I think that's fine, and you'll hear me do that too. But I do want to take some pains to explain that in Michigan, we don't actually obliterate the records. When the records are expunged or set aside, what actually happens with the records is they become non-public. And so that's important, I think, for people to know that that record does still live on. It does not literally get destroyed. So in the future, if you are applying for a job and you have your record set aside, you are entitled to say, no, I have not been convicted of a crime. However, if you apply for a job with the FBI, or if you get in trouble again, that prosecutor who's handling your case will see that prior case that was expunged. And so it's not gone forever, but it is set aside so that folks can have better access to housing, education, and jobs. And that's what this is really all about, right? We've got folks who maybe made a mistake. They're trying to get their life back on track. They've been following all the rules. And we all know as a community that if these folks are able to find employment and housing, that they're much more likely to be successful. They're very, very unlikely to reoffend. But we also know that if they're unable to find housing and jobs, that they're much more likely to reoffend. So this whole idea with the change in the law is that let's make it easier for these folks to get their records cleared. Let's make it easier for folks who've shown they can do well with a second chance to stay on track, to keep that job, to get that job, to keep that housing. And we know that it's going to result in better public safety and better results for that individual who deserved and needed the expungement, but also for the community as a whole. So that's kind of the general idea that was driving some of these legislative changes that we were able to make recently. So what have we been doing? Over the course of the last year, we've been debating these bills, and I'm really excited that the governor just signed them. And they do three main things. One, they create a system of automatic set-asides for certain petty offenses. So if you have a very minor misdemeanor, that is going to be automatically set aside. So non-assaultive misdemeanors, non-DUI related driving offenses, we're going to treat those with an automatic set aside. And that's going to happen 7 years after a misdemeanor and 10 years for the eligible for the eligible felonies. We also created a system for offenses that we consider to just be very petty offenses. And so these would be things like driving with license suspended, or things like the offenses that are now legal, like possession or use of cannabis. And so what we did with those offenses is we said that you can apply for a set aside of those offenses. They're going to be automatically granted unless a prosecutor objects and can establish that what you were doing was not now legal activity. So that's how the possession and use of cannabis issues are going to be dealt with. I think prosecutors have 60 days to object to those, and there's a presumption that if you have that low-level cannabis crime, that it's going to be that's going to be set aside. That alone, possession and use of cannabis affects 235,000 people here in the state of Michigan, and those records are going to largely be automatically set aside. Any individual who has a record for possession with intent to deliver or for manufacture of marijuana, which are now legal, of course, in the state of Michigan, those folks are going to have to apply and didn't get into the automatic. The other thing we did, the third big leg of the stool, was that we expanded how many crimes can be expunged. As Mr. Reiser mentioned earlier, Michigan has very, very strict rules up to 2 misdemeanors and up to 1 felony. And that really tripped up a ton of folks. And I know that I've been hearing from the folks at Michigan Works who've been doing these expungement fairs for several years now. And that was one of the biggest things I heard, was that, man, we get tons of people who come in, they're doing well, their life's on track, but they can't get that record expunged because they've got 1 too many misdemeanor, or they've got 1 too many felonies. And sometimes these were even situations where there were multiple crimes that were all sort of part of one activity. And so what we did is we did a couple things. One, we expanded the number of crimes that you can have expunged. And then we also said through House Bill 4985 that many of us called one bad night, that if you have a number of offenses that are all part of one criminal transaction, that those are to be counted as one. And so those are kind of the big changes that we made to the law. Anybody who has a record and is looking to get their record expunged has been told in the past that they couldn't get their record expunged because they had, 1 too many felonies or a couple too many misdemeanors. Those folks now will have an opportunity to do so. And perhaps the most important part is that now that the governor has signed this, the legislature and the administration are getting to work on how we make the automatic expungement happen. That's going to probably take somewhere between, I would say, a year or 2. It's a pretty major database project. The state's going to be hiring a bunch of people to, go into the system and try to write code that will, automatically expunge all these records. And that's going to take a little bit of time. So I don't want folks to think that, the moment that the governor's pen lifted from the page, that, that was automatically done. And then if you do a record search on iChat, that record is already blown away. It's not. It's going to take some time for us to actually get that together. And then, the final thing that I'll say about this is that there's just a lot more work to do on this issue. We at the legislature still need to make sure that we bird dog this process to make sure that those records are actually cleared. As was mentioned by APA Reiser, there are records in district courts all over the state, and we do not have a statewide criminal record database. And so it's a very complicated and balkanized system. And we need to make sure that all those 90-day misdemeanors are properly taken care of, so that somebody later on who's applying for a job or applying for housing doesn't check that box saying, yeah, I had my record expunged. I can check this box saying I don't have a conviction. And then all of a sudden, some old conviction that shouldn't be on a record ends up being presented to an employer. And so we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that none of that happens. And we're going to try to make sure that happens with some appropriations here and get this process going so that folks don't have to go down to the courthouse to get their record cleared. So this has been exciting. It's one of the really great things that's happening in Lansing right now, amid all the other political craziness that's happening. There is some positive work going on across the island, Lansing, with respect to criminal justice reform.
Well, thank you there, Senator Irwin. We really appreciate you sharing that information with us. It is definitely, something that most of the public is interested in. We've heard about it in the news, and to have you and APA Reiser here this morning discussing this with us, kind of breaks it down. So we thank you for that, sir. We'll move on with the program now. In this portion, we're going to have Attorney Michael King from Michigan Legal Help discuss with us what our particular process is. Like Johnny said earlier, we've been doing this now for 4 years. This is the 4th year we've been doing it. And, the prior 3 years, we actually did it in a live situation. And it was a one-stop shop. You came in, you got pre-screened, you went on from there, and you got your application made, you got it notarized, got it fingerprinted, and at the end of it all, we had a total application ready to send off so that the process would begin. But of course, this year it's going to be a little different because of everything else that's going on and trying to make sure that everyone remains safe, sound, and stay well in our state and in our county. So I'm going to bring back up the screen so that Attorney Michael King can go ahead and talk with us about the expungement process. All right. Mike, if you're there, it's up to you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Herb. I saw that the screen was shared. I'm not sure if it's still shared now, but I can't see it. Well, perfect. Well, that comes up. Senator Irwin, I did have a question. You mentioned that the automatic expungements won't likely take effect for 1 or 2 years, but can you tell the audience when the other portions of the bills are going to take effect? I saw somewhere that it was probably 180 days from the time that Governor Whitmer signed that. Would you say that's accurate? Or do you imagine that they're going to be in effect much sooner than that April date?
Yeah, my understanding is that these bills all go into effect at the beginning of April. I'll go back and double check to see if there's a different effective date in the acts right while you're talking. But yeah, my understanding is that'll all go into effect at the beginning of April.
Fantastic, thanks. So with that being said, and I think with everything that you've heard today, especially from John Reiser's presentation, you understand how complicated the expungement process is in Michigan. And that's why our committee has come together and they've decided to try to help as many people in Washtenaw County as possible get these expungements. So the current law that John Reiser explained is still in effect. And so that is the process that we're still dealing with now. So we can go to the next screen here to basically, so if you're interested in getting an expungement and you have a Washtenaw County conviction, you can contact the committee, which will more than likely be through Michigan Works. Their email address is expungement@mwse.org, or you can contact Johnny or Herb directly by calling them on their phone lines. This screen will be shared at the very end of the presentation, so you'll get all that information again. Yep, so we can go on to the next one. So our process starts with you contacting somebody from Michigan Works and scheduling an appointment to screen for eligibility. And so what that entails is somebody from Michigan Works looking up your iChat and seeing if you're eligible based on the information on your iChat. If you are eligible, then the next step in the process is your file will be shared with the attorneys on this committee. And we basically take care of everything from there. John explained how complicated the process is in terms of copies that have to be made, documents that have to be gathered, and parties that have to be served. So we take care of everything. One of the first things we do is make sure that people who are pre-screened and determined to be eligible, we make sure they are actually eligible. Things can get a little tricky, especially if somebody has any records from out of state. So you'd be working with an attorney to just help make sure that you're eligible. Then if you are eligible, your application will be completed for you. We will gather all of the court records you need to file your application. Then we'll actually file the application and serve all the parties. And you will be matched with an attorney to represent you during your expungement hearing. That is something that's very important. Sometimes people think that once they file the application, that's the last step. There is a hearing that comes along with it, and that's when the judge decides whether to grant your application or not. So you will be matched with an attorney. The Sheriff's Department will fingerprint you at no cost because that is part of the application process, and we'll help schedule that for you as well. So once your fingerprints are done, we'll send everything to the different parties, which include the Michigan State Police, the Michigan Attorney General, and the local prosecutor in the case. And one of the things that we were very lucky with in the past year is that we received a grant from the United Way of Washtenaw County to help cover the $50 fee that John mentioned. So really, this is kind of like a one-stop shop where we can take care of everything dealing with the current law. If you, after you contact us and after we go through the process, if you want to learn a little bit more about what to expect, or if you want a refresher on what to expect, you can go to michiganlegalhelp.org. And there we have a toolkit specifically about setting aside adult convictions. So you can get all the information you need. We have articles that go into very detailed information. And then we also have a checklist that goes through the process step by step. And again, one of the good things about working with our committee is that we'll take care of everything, but that's just as a reference for you. And that ends the presentation. So I'll pass it back to Herb and he will take care of the question and answer section of this. Oh, you're still muted.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate all of that. At this point, you know, you've heard from the panelists, and you've also heard from, you know, our service center manager and myself. We would like to take that opportunity now to address some questions. One of our committee members, Kelly Dorsey, she'll be reading us the questions, and then I'll kind of see who would like to answer the particular question. Okay, so Kelly, if you could start with our first question.
Good morning, everyone. So we have one question. This is a two-part question. Someone asked, in the era of COVID, will there be a Michigan forum to ask people how they process the expungement or setting aside the conviction? What are the metrics being used to track best practices and understanding the disparaging inequities that exist within policy?
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Would anyone on the committee or any of the panelists like to take a stab at the question?
I can talk about the court. And I know that Judge Simpson in the 14A1 District Court has had expungement matters handled on his docket during COVID, and he did it via Zoom, and it was uneventful. It didn't hurt anything. You know, it was pretty honestly convenient. You could do it from your home. That was probably the easiest part of the process. The inequities I'll leave to Senator Irwin, but I know that Republicans and Democrats recognize, and prosecutors recognize, that the law has to be changed. And you know, maybe it's a case of Rome wasn't built in a day, and you get what you can with legislation now. And then when they see that the sky didn't fall, they can tweak it and make it more just in the future. That's really not my bailiwick, though.
All right, thanks, John.
Really quick, I think you covered it, you know, pretty well, John. You know, you know, bird dogging that process of how it works with these changes in this law is going to be something that the legislature does. You know, part of the reason why it was so important that a lot of us were fighting so hard for automatic expungements was because of this issue of, you know, who has access to the courts really? And, you know, is that access really equal? And so we know it's not. We know that there are issues related to poverty and racism and all sorts of issues that are barriers for folks. And so that was one of the main reasons why many of us are pushing so hard for this automatic piece. So that way, you know, we'll just, you know, take care of these petty offenses in a blanket fashion. And, you know, hopefully soon the legislature will get a report that says, yeah, this has been done and here's who it affected. And we know that when we talk about racial inequities here in the state of Michigan, that because of the discriminatory way that insurance rates are developed, because of the redlining in Michigan that is still unfortunately legal, and together with the segregation we have in our state, which is thoroughgoing, you know, you have situations where the people who are caught up in the net of driving without insurance or driving without proof for insurance, or then driving with license suspended, which is a huge cohort of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Those folks are overwhelmingly people of color. They're overwhelmingly Black people, and so you know, when you when you try to zero in on fixing this system, I think part of the reason we're doing that is to try to address those inequalities that are baked in because of our policy. So I hope that answers it. And one other thing I'll add, which is that, you know, one thing that I've been trying to do in my office when I started seeing these bills moving, I realized that, oh, okay, this is great and this is going to help a lot of people, but this doesn't do anything for our juveniles. And we know that in Michigan, not only do we have disproportionate law enforcement contact with adults, but we have it even in a greater sense with juveniles. And so what I introduced was a package of bills called Clean Slate for Kids that is meant to provide the same sorts of opportunities for a second chance, the same sorts of opportunities for record expungement for folks who committed their crimes when they're juveniles. Those bills passed the Senate and they're still in the House at this point. And so that's a little bit about how we're trying to address some of these inequities.
Okay, thank you there, Senator. Kelly, I see that we have 2 additional questions in the Q&A portion. If you could read us the next question, please.
Yes. Next question is, what if you are from another state?
All right, would someone like to take a stab at that or have an answer for that from the panel?
Sure, I can address that. So if you're saying that you were convicted in Washtenaw County, but you now live in another state, we've actually helped people in that situation before. So you would still go through the same process and either contact Herb or Johnny to get the pre-screening done. And then if you're eligible, then we'll go forward with the application just as if you were still living within Michigan. What might get a little tricky is when it comes time to go to court for your hearing, depending on where things are. It may be possible that you can attend the hearing virtually, which is currently what's happening within the state, but it kind of depends on where things are and if the judge would allow that for your hearing. So if you are out of state, but you have a conviction within Michigan, specifically within Washtenaw County, definitely still contact us and we can potentially see if we can help you.
Okay, next question, please. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, we have an attendee that asks, so they have 1 felony and 1 misdemeanor from 2011 for a nonviolent crime, but it's theft related. And they recently got 2 OWIs, within the last 2 years. Do they qualify for expungement under the current law?
All right, John, would you like to take a shot at that one?
I was listening, but you've got 2 drunk drivings, which is tricky because that qualifies. So you're already hurting because you got 2 misdemeanors. And now you have what else?
1 felony and 1 misdemeanor from 2011 for theft-related nonviolent crime.
Yeah, it's not the violence because assault and battery can be, and it's not the theft. It's really, with respect to your question, it's the number. And my count is up to 4, 1 felony and 3 misdemeanors, right? And is that how you see it, Michael?
Right. So currently you wouldn't be eligible, but under the new law, it could be possible that you could be eligible for the first felony and misdemeanor that you mentioned. However, I believe that traffic violations, specifically OWIs or any sort of driving under the influence, are still non-expungible. And Senator Irwin can correct me on that, but so it's possible that you can set aside the first misdemeanor and the first felony, but the other 2, unfortunately, would likely have to stay on your record. One of the things that that you may want to do too is, since the 2 OWIs are so recent, you can definitely talk to one of the attorneys and you can strategize about the best time to actually file your applications, even though your felony and misdemeanor are well within the 5-year the 5-year timeline requirement under the current law. Sometimes interaction with law enforcement and convictions that occur after can complicate things a little bit. So it really would be best if you contact either Johnny or Herb and then get the ball rolling, and then you can talk to one of the attorneys and we can help strategize your case.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that, as far as I know, and I'm not an attorney, that's absolutely accurate. The one piece of additional flavor to add is that during the debate of these bills, there were a couple issues of controversy. And one of the big issues of controversy was this issue of driving while intoxicated, all the sort of different issues around alcohol and driving or drug driving. And there were amendments made in both the House and the Senate to add those drunk driving offenses back in, and those were beaten back. And I think that just, you know, for the benefit of the citizen, that issue is going to continue to be discussed. The other issue that I think will continue to be discussed is that I was personally frustrated that the definition of assaultive crimes included a few things that I didn't think were assaultive. So, for instance, resisting and obstructing arrest is coded as an assaultive crime, even though we have fleeing and eluding and other, other things to sort of take care of situations where folks actually fight the police. But, resisting and obstructing has become sort of an add-on offense for just about everything else. And so keeping that one in the list of assaultive crimes, I think, was a mistake. Anyway, so we're going to continue to try to work on improving these laws, but the drunk driving piece is probably the biggest piece that was just completely left out of this. And if your offense is drunk driving, then there's nothing that we did in the change of the law that's going to improve your situation.
Thank you, panelists. We appreciate that, and we'll move on to the next question, please.
Next question is, can you apply for an expungement now if you qualify under the new clean slate law, but not under the current expungement laws, or should you wait the 180 days to apply?
I don't think you should apply because they'll process your application and you'll be on the docket and you'll have wasted $50. But Mike, what's your take?
Right, I would just wait. If you're eligible under the new law, then it makes sense just to wait for that new law to actually take effect. Because as John mentioned, once you file the application, it's started and they're gonna look at whatever law is currently in place. So if you apply now, you get on the docket, you get in front of the judge will deny your application. And what's dangerous about that is whenever judges deny an expungement application, there's sometimes a 3-year waiting period, after which you have to wait before you can apply again. So it definitely makes sense to hold off until April to contact us, and then we can look at your situation and then potentially file your application for you then.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Next question, someone wants to know if there is a glossary of terms that individuals can use to understand the policy. Understanding language is important for transformative reform. As an educated person, not in law, the language can still be confusing.
So I'll answer this. So I will say this, the expungement statute, the current one, is incredibly confusing. One of the places I would recommend you look, and it's not just plugging the website that I work for, but MichiganLegalHelp.org really does break things down in a really understandable manner. So we take incredibly complex topics like expungement statute and we write it at approximately a 6th grade reading level. So that is in order to try to help people actually understand what's going on. And then if you still have questions about it, you can use the chat function to chat with somebody live and they can help answer the questions for you. But I think a great place to start is MichiganLegalHelp.org.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next question, please.
Okay. Next question, I believe they're asking if they can get this conviction or convictions expunged, but they're saying that they have 2 felonies and the others are misdemeanors.
Not yet. Not yet. Michael, you agree? 2 felonies, 2 misdemeanors?
Right. So under the current law, you couldn't, but the new law, I believe that the limit is it 2 felonies? Is it 2 felonies, 4 misdemeanors? And then, right. So it sounds like you're good under the new law. So if you just wait until April, You can definitely contact us now, but if you wait until April, then that's when we'll look and make sure that under the new law that you're able to apply, and then we'd submit your application for you.
Next question, please.
Next question, kind of framed the same way. This attendee is saying that their convictions are from over 10 years ago.
I'm sure the attorneys have a better answer, but just to jump in really quickly, I think with all of these questions, when you've got a conviction that's a lot older, I think that one of the decisions you're going to have to make, and I'd encourage you to make it in consultation with one of these attorneys, is, does it make sense for you to apply right away in April to try to get that off your record as soon as possible because you need it off your record soon because you're applying for jobs or you just want it off your record? Or if you want to, because your offense is older, just wait for the automatic to kick in so that you can avoid having to go to court and avoid having to pay the filing fee and all of that. So that's just a decision you're going to have to make on your own. And that's why I said at the very beginning, my estimate for how quickly, that automatic is going to happen is about 1 to 2 years. So, I think there's a little bit of, just kind of decision making you have to make about, how urgently you want that off your record.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to, I think we got a couple of more questions, and then we're going to wrap up our Q&A. So if you have a question and we can't get to it live, we will look at these questions and reach back out to you. Can you move on with the next question, please?
Yes. Attendee wants to know, how do they find out how many felonies they have?
So
I chat or call the prosecutor's office, and then I need to bug out Michael and Jeff and handle another meeting. So thanks, you.
John.
Yep, bye-bye.
Yeah, so what John said was absolutely right. iChat isn't just something that we can use during this process. It really is a public tool that people can use to look up their own records. It does cost $10 whenever you want to run it, but it should show you everything that's on the public facing side of the police record. So you can go to, if you just search on the internet, Michigan State Police iChat, from there you can pull your own iChat record. However, if you want to save yourself $10, you can also come to us and we can start the process for you. As John mentioned, you can contact the prosecutor's office or even any court that you had interaction with. You can get records from them, but again, that might cost you.
You can also contact our office, the public defender's office, and we will look in the public records for you to see what we can find.
Hey, Herb, you're still muted.
Okay, next question. How long does the expungement process typically take?
So that really depends on a few things. Just to give you an idea, once we have your application and file it, we have to send it to the Michigan State Police, and from there, the Michigan State Police analyze the applications, but they also analyze the fingerprints and have to send them to the FBI. And so that process typically takes between, I think the estimate is between 4 and 6 weeks. And then after that, some courts require that they hear back from the Michigan State Police before they'll even schedule your hearing, whereas other courts will schedule your hearing a couple months into the future while they're waiting for those records to be returned and that information to be sent from the Michigan State Police. So I think one of the estimates that is most commonly given is between 2 and 4 months, but we have heard of cases that have taken a little longer because there have been issues with records. But this, unfortunately, expungement isn't one of those things that you can take care of within a matter of a week or two.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Next question, please.
This question is, in your opinion, what do you like about this new set-aside law? Do you have any feedback for people new to the process?
I can jump in since I was an advocate of these bills and really happy to vote for them. Now, what do I like about it? I, at the risk of repeating some of the things I said at the beginning, I like the fact that we've got a whole bunch of folks in our community who are trying to get their lives back on track and who have put their lives back on track, but might have some sort of criminal conviction hanging over them that impairs their ability to, get better education or training or housing or get a better job. And, that doesn't help us. That hurts all of us. And so we need to make a criminal justice system that works for our communities and that works for the people in our communities. And I think a lot of folks recognized for many years that our expungement policy in Michigan was extremely restrictive, unnecessarily restrictive in ways that held people back who were trying to, contribute to their communities. And so that's why we changed it. That's why we opened it up and made it, from one of the most restrictive policies in the nation to one of the more generous policies in the nation in terms of the opportunities for folks to get their record clear.
Thank you, Senator. This will conclude our Q&A session for now. If your questions did not get answered, you can email us your question to expungement@MichiganWorks Southeast or expungement@mwse.org. Or you can just give Johnny a call or give myself a call and we will attempt to answer your question. We really appreciate the audience participation, and all of our panelists' information is very, very valuable. The last thing on our agenda is some closing remarks. I'll first ask our Service Center Manager, Johnny, if he'd like to say anything, or any of the other committee members. If not, I will wrap it up with closing remarks.
First, I'd just like to thank the committee and the panelists for being involved with this today. I know everyone is busy, but I think this is a big need for the community. And also to my coworkers, thank you for being involved. And to the center, really appreciate your time and effort and helping us with this big need in the community. And to the customers and individuals that tuned into this webinar, thank you for being a part of this. I know it's something different that we've done in the years prior, but we still want to service your needs. And like we said before, if you have any questions, please email us your questions or call myself or Herb, and we will get back with you as soon as we can.
Thank you, Johnny. And before I get my closing remarks, I'm just going to share the last slide for those of you who may need our contact information so that you can see that information and copy it down. And that is our information there for you to see. Again, you can either email us at expungement@michiganworkssoutheast.org or contact Johnny or myself. Our phone numbers are listed, Johnny's number being 734-714-9825 or area code 734-714-9817 for Herb. And if you don't remember any of this, just remember Michigan Works Southeast, our Washtenaw Service Center. You can Google that, and when you call, someone will transfer you to either Johnny or myself. I want to thank everyone. First, let me thank the audience for taking time out to spend with us, all of the attendees. We are eager to help you with your set aside. As the senator has correctly said, the set aside of your record or expungement, and we'd like to get that process started with you. But I would also like to thank all of the panelists and definitely the committee. Without the committee, without the panelists, none of this can be done. We will continue to work tirelessly to help. There's a lot of agencies in this county that are working together to help you out so that you can move on with your lives. Again, thank you for attending the Expungement virtual webinar, our 4th annual event. And you better believe we will have something again, next year, because we're going to continue working hard with our state legislature, with all of our attorneys, to try to assist the public as much as we can. Again, thank you, and please have a great day.